Hi, this is Social Psychology Part 2. Write this down or know the difference between prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice is in your head. It's an attitude. It's a feeling that you have towards someone, a negative feeling. I don't like those people. That is prejudice. I don't like fat people. I don't like Asians. I don't like women, or I don't think a man would be good for this job. That might be prejudice, okay? But discrimination is potentially illegal in the United States. It's an action that you take against someone because of your prejudice. When you don't hire somebody because of who they are, that is illegal almost. Age discrimination is pretty legal, but racial discrimination is not legal. For example, if you are pregnant on a job interview, the people who are asking or interviewing you are not allowed to ask you about your pregnancy. Women are not allowed to be asked, when are you going to have children? That is illegal in the United States. That is discrimination, okay? Age discrimination, however, is fairly legal. But again, we're getting into politics and stuff, but discrimination is an action. You could be prejudiced. You can say, I don't like women on the job, but you would still hire a woman. So you could have the prejudice in your head, but you might not discriminate based on that prejudice. So prejudice and discrimination are technically different, okay? All right, moving right along. Ethnocentricism, write this down. So you see the word centric, center. You see the word ethno, think ethnic. It's seeing everyone through the eyes of your own culture or your own nationality, okay? So it's kind of like being self-centered, but not really. It's when it's hard to get out of your own perspective and see things from another person's perspective, okay? Like, for example, for white people, it's very typical, in America anyway, it's very typical to say, you should just stand up to your parents and move out and move away from them across the country. That's very much a white American thing to do. But not everybody wants to just abandon their family all the time. Some people would rather just suck it up and deal with their family. That's just one of many examples of ethnocentrism, okay? All right, and so here's, these are examples of ethnocentrism, okay? All right, moving right along. How do you combat prejudice? Well, one thing you can do is have a superordinate goal. And what that is that it's a common goal. For example, and also mere exposure, okay? But let's talk about subordinate goal. All right, so mere exposure is simply if you don't like, let's say you don't like Vietnamese people. So you go hang out with them. And you find out that Vietnamese people are just like anybody else. You'll like some of them. You won't like some of them. They're just normal people, okay? That's mere exposure. Also, subordinate goal. When you are an athlete and you're on a basketball team, for example, you don't care about race, really. You care about winning games. That's what you care about. So when you go into the locker room of a sports team, you're probably not going to see a lot of racism because you have the subordinate goal of winning a game. If you're in a company or in a business, your goal is to make money and let the company succeed. And you kind of put those prejudices aside when you have a subordinate goal, okay? All right, moving right along. So how prejudiced are people? It doesn't seem like it very recently, but people's prejudices have been dropping. And I do believe that. The issue is that we've got people who are raising the standard of what is considered acceptable behavior. People accuse me of being prejudiced all the time. but yeah, it's a lot more subtle nowadays. It's a lot more subtle. Okay. All right, hit pause if you want to look at that. This is more sociology anyway. All right, so negative attitudes that are tinged with fear, hatred, or suspicion is what? All right, the answer is prejudice. Discrimination is an action that you take on that prejudice. Okay? All right. One way to reduce intergroup conflict is to establish what? And it doesn't even matter about race or anything. It could be anything. And this is something you would study in industrial organizational psychology, workplace psychology. If you have a subordinate goal, then you're not going to have as much intergroup conflict. A common goal. It's a common goal. Okay. All right. What is the Zimbardo prison experiment? I'll have to give you a link. I'm not going to spend time here showing you a video, but there are plenty of videos on YouTube. But here's the deal. There is a guy named Philip Zimbardo. He's still alive, big-time celebrity in the psychology world. And in the early 70s, he did this crazy experiment where he selected people in a newspaper ad to work for the summer, it's just a few weeks. And he would randomly select these college students to either be a prison guard or to be a prisoner. And you can see that he gave the prisoners uniforms and he gave the guards uniforms too. He even gave them mirrored sunglasses. And it turns out that the guards, they took on their roles a little bit too much. They became fairly abusive toward the prisoners. And the prisoners also took on their role. They had a riot. They rebelled. Some of them were suicidal. Some of them pretended to be suicidal, because what you get is this in-group, out-group dynamic. The guards, they all come together and they all become united. And then the prisoners also get this in-group dynamic. And Zimbardo ended up having to cut the experiment off. I don't know if it was an experiment, but the study off early because everyone was getting so abusive. But the point of this is that situational factors affect behavior. You may remember a SpongeBob episode where SpongeBob became the hall monitor, and then he just took his job too seriously. The uniform does affect the psychology of the person. So the situation can affect people's behavior. So Zimbardo will defend soldiers in Iraq when they became abusive toward the Iraqi prisoners. And, in the United States, you've got the January 6th attempted insurrection, and people might say that they were just taken up by the situation. They might defend themselves that way. But I'm not going to spend time in this video on this topic. I'll spend it on other topics. But anyway, so look for any Zimbardo prison experiment in YouTube. Okay, and there's a whole movie on somewhere right now called I don't know. Anyway, okay, so let's try this one. Zimbardo's prison experiment studied what? Okay, so it's not conformity. Okay, it's not about obedience. A looks tempting, but the answer is C. How a person's current situation affects their thinking and behavior. So if you have a uniform on, you will take on that role of the uniform. Okay? Sometimes giving people a badge can negatively affect their morals. It's true. So try this one. During the Stanford prison study, it's definitely not A, the opposite of A. All right, the answer is B. The guards took on their roles too seriously. And which of the following is a testament to the power of roles? And the answer is Zimbardo's prison experiment. The power of roles, the power of the situation to overwhelm the individual. Okay? And I have seen Zimbardo on the AP exam, but I've seen it in more of an example of unethical experimentation. Okay? All right, cognitive dissonance, write this down. So cognitive means thinking, okay? Cognitive therapy, the whole chapter on cognition. And dissonance is discomfort. Musicians know dissonance. Whenever you get on a piano and you play a black key and a white key together and you bang them down together, you get a clang, that's a dissonant sound. It means discomfort. It's when your thinking and your behaviors clash and you feel discomfort. And cognitive dissonance theory says that you will try to get rid of that discomfort by changing your thinking. So here's an example of cognitive dissonance. You believe that cheating on your test is bad, but then you cheat on the test. So that creates dissonance. It creates discomfort. So what do you do to resolve that discomfort? You rationalize it. You justify it somehow. You blame the teacher or something like that, or you blame your situation. Okay? So here's an example of cognitive dissonance. The tuition here is too high in college. But then you also think the school needs money. And these conflicting thoughts create cognitive dissonance. And then you need to resolve that dissonance. Usually people resolve that dissonance by changing your attitude. Okay? So this is just a meme I ran into that I thought was funny. Imagine if you think both of these at the same time, it might create cognitive dissonance. Okay, all right. According to the theory of cognitive dissonance, attitudes are changed because why? And the answer is C. Discomfort, dissonance. Okay? All right, here's an AP question. When a person experiences two thoughts that are incompatible, psychological tension may be produced, leading to an attempt to reconcile the discrepant thoughts. Which of the following concepts best characterizes this response? Okay, hit pause, but the answer is E, cognitive dissonance. Okay. Cognitive dissonance theory is based on the human need for what? Hit pause, but the answer is we want consistency. And if we don't get it, we feel discomfort and we want to try to get consistency. But we want consistency. All right, let's talk about conformity. Conformity and group pressure. Okay? All right. I'm going to show you a video.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white t-shirt.
He's the sucker.
The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
Two.
So they're all
Two.
answering honestly, no big deal.
Three.
But on the third trial, something happens.
Two.
They're giving
Two.
the wrong answer.
Two.
So what's he going to do?
Two.
The subject denies the evidence.
All right, let's try this again.
2.
So they're giving the wrong answer.
2.
What's he going to do?
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1.
Ash found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials.
37%.
But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1. 1. They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me. 1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
So what's he going to do?
1. 1. 2.
And they all look at him to make him feel better.
1.
So the next
2.
time around,
2. 2.
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2. 2. 2. 2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Ash gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the 3rd position, who also gives the correct response.
1. 1.
okay?
2. 1.
So what's he going to do?
2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner.
So with a partner, it's not unanimous. And then conformity drops from 1/3 all the way down to only 5%. So people will conform if it's unanimous, but not nearly enough as much when there's a partner, when it's not unanimous.
Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Ash. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1. 1. 1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform.
So when
Conformity drops by 2/3.
So when he is in fear of rejection by the group, he does not conform his answers. Subjects did not conform their answers when it was anonymous.
Ash's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
Okay, so the famous study, Solomon Ash's conformity experiment. Write this down. Write this down. So the idea of fashion trends is a good example. Why do we conform? Okay. I would even draw these lines to trigger your memory later on, but it's the line study. About 1/3 of participants conformed. It explains fashion trends and other conforming behavior. In order for people to conform, the group must be unanimous and at least 3 people in the group. If it's only 2 people, then the conformity totally drops. Okay? All right, moving right along. All right, hit pause if you need to, but moving right along. Okay, so conditions that strengthen conformity. 1 is made to feel incompetent or insecure. The group has to have at least 3 people and be unanimous. Also, 1 admires the group's status and attractiveness. Okay, 1 has no prior commitment to a response. And the group has to observe 1's behavior. So the person who wrote their answer down did not conform. Okay? All right, here's a meme that I made like 10 years ago, but all right, moving right along. So, and this is stuff that happens to us to a large extent, and we can deny it, and that's fine. Write this down. All right. So we've got normative conformity. It's when you try to fit in and avoid rejection. And then we've got informational social influence. It's when we accept others' opinions or accept others' actions as reality. Solomon Ash's experiment was kind of both, okay? But anyway, but normative social influence is when we want to fit in and avoid rejection, okay? Informational social influence is when we actually believe the reality. Oh, I like this music, or I like this kind of movie, when you really don't. Okay? All right, moving right along. All right. Solomon Asch is best known for his studies in what? Now, the AP psychology exam is rarely do you need to know somebody's name, but this is a rare question where you do need to know somebody's name. Okay? So the answer is not obedience, but conformity. Solomon Asch studied conformity. Okay? All right. In the experiments of Solomon Asch, the tendency of group members to conform was reduced most by which of the following factors? All right. Take your time, hit pause, but the answer is the presence of a single dissenter reduced from 1/3 to 5% the times that they conformed. Even though Carlos prefers documentaries, he often goes to comedy films to fit in with his friends. Carlos's behavior can best be explained by what? All right. All right, hit pause, but the answer is that's normative social influence, okay? This was on the AP exam, but I deleted some of the answer choices so it would fit. Which of the following is the best interpretation of Solomon Asch's findings pictured above concerning conformity and perceptual judgments? Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the answer is C. So once you have a group size of 3, then that makes a big difference. Okay. Solomon Asch's findings on conformity might best be used to explain why what? All right, the answer is B, fads in dress and hairstyle. Okay. Remember in Mean Girls when Regina George, they cut her boobs off in the shirt and then she wore it around? Yeah, that would be, and then everybody started doing it. All right. Before Zimbardo, Stanley Milgram was the bad boy of psychology. In the 1960s, he did a study to study obedience to authority. Okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and play this video. It's going to be about 10 minutes.
There are 9 subjects left. I can only use 4 for the heist, so a week after the seminar, I arranged to test the limits of their responsiveness to authority. So, a week ago, I arranged for them to take part in what they now think is a piece of unfilmed academic research at a university, and nothing to do with the show, supposedly looking into the effects of punishment on learning. And they believe now that this is part of their growth. In fact, it was a reenactment of a powerful experiment conducted by Stanley Milgram in 1963 to look at how normal people can commit atrocious acts simply because they're following orders. Milgram's parents were Jewish refugees in World War II, and his pioneering work speaks volumes about the nature of responsibility. It's being filmed with covert cameras.
Thank you.
Come in.
They're introduced to an actor pretending to be another participant.
You didn't come from the same room? No. Yeah, you don't know each other. No. We don't actually know how punishment affects learning.
After a brief introduction, our subjects are tricked into thinking they've chosen their role as teachers in the experiment.
And if you could just tell me what your positions are? Learner and teacher. Learner.
Our subjects observe the learner being instructed by the scientist, who is just another actor.
This electrode is connected to a generator in the second room. We might be going with the teacher. Okay. Just make sure that we have a good contact with the skin so it doesn't cause any blistering and burning. Is that comfortable? That's okay, yeah. Yeah, we just place these straps around your arms just to avoid any excess movement. Those aren't too tight. No, that's okay. No. The teacher will read out some word pairs to you. Blue girl.
The learner is told he's going to be asked a series of memory questions by the teacher. He will have to word pairs and then correctly remember them when offered multiple choices.
If the answer is incorrect, you will receive an electric shock.
The teacher is then taken next door and shown the generator, which ranges from 15 volts all the way up to a lethal 450 volts. The domestic electricity supply in the UK is, of course, 240 volts. Our teachers are given the list of questions and told to increase the voltage each time the learner gets a question wrong. They are then given an example of a low voltage shock.
And try and estimate in volts the amount of shock you feel you're getting.
Okay. Oh, shit.
Do you know how much that was?
Enough.
75.
It was actually 45.
Oh my God.
Teacher, begin.
Shoe, horn, steam.
The point of this test is to see whether the teachers, our subjects, will call a stop to the experiment or continue to the point where they are administering seemingly lethal electric shocks to the victims simply because the scientist is telling them to.
That's correct.
So will he obey?
The next word is bicycle. The options tyre, race, helmet, shorts. That's incorrect, so there'll be 120 volts.
So he's all the way up to 120.
I don't think I want to do this anymore. There is... No, I don't think I'm going to do anymore.
So he didn't obey the guy in the white lab coat. He did a good job. But what are other people going to do? Are they
Yeah,
going to
even
obey?
so, I don't think I'm going to do anymore.
That's what Milgram was trying to find out.
Correct.
Will people obey?
According to plan, our accomplice provided many wrong answers. Each protest was coordinated to a particular shock voltage on the generator, and his responses were played via a CD.
That's wrong, 150 volts. The correct answer is Captain Shoe. Cup. That's wrong. 225 volts.
That's a lot of electricity.
Take it off! I've had enough of this!
Take it off. I've had enough of this.
He's in a lot of pain.
Continue, please.
But he's not comfortable.
We must continue to the end of the experiment. Whether the learner likes it or not, he has to go on until he's learnt the words correctly.
Okay.
That's obedience.
Forest. That's wrong, 240 volts. Are you sure this is not causing any lasting damage? He sounds like he's in a lot of pain.
Well, the shocks might be painful, they're not harmful.
What does that mean, though? They're not harmful. Sorry, I'm not getting you. When you say that they might be painful but not harmful,
They cause no long-term damage.
because what does that mean? That it doesn't leave any scars?
It causes no damage.
That seems very cold and calculated to me. This doesn't seem like a very... Anyway. Golden. That's wrong, mate. 300 volts.
I refuse to answer anymore. Just let me out.
Staple. The options are diet, jar, balcony, and bowl. I'm going to answer.
If the learner doesn't answer in a reasonable time, say 4 to 5 seconds, then you have to treat the answer as wrong and follow that procedure.
Did you hear that, learner? Just any response, mate. Come on. Wild guess.
Please continue.
345 volts if you're still with me. I'm sorry. I can't do this, honestly. Can we stop this experiment? Because I can't do this.
If you don't continue, we'll have to discontinue the experiment.
Yeah, okay, fine. That's fine. I'm not going to do this.
So he did...
Incorrect. 405 volts.
That's a lot of volts. So Milgram was seeing, will he obey the guy in the white lab coat?
Sorry, I don't know. Does someone want to check on him or something? It's just he's not making any noise now, and he was before. And I'm quite happy to go on, but I'm just a bit worried about.
You should continue.
Yeah, I'm just a bit worried because he was like he was like complaining before about the.
But no harm will come to him.
But he's not making any noise now.
It's essential that we continue with the experiment.
Balcony. Incorrect. 450 volts.
That would kill you.
You promise he's not. It won't.
Please continue with the procedure.
Like, you say it hurts, but it's because it's like it says they're dangerous initial. You'll be all right. Yeah.
Please continue. Okay, I think we'll discontinue the experiment there.
All of the subjects were told the true nature of the experiment was to see how they would respond to authority, and that
That's
it would
debriefing.
eventually form part of this show.
It is okay.
Debriefing is when you tell the subjects afterward the nature of the study. That's called debriefing.
I can tell you, he's absolutely fine. You actually weren't administering electric shocks to him at all. He is.
In the original Milgram experiment, psychologists were asked to predict how many people would continue to the point that they were administering the highest shock on the board. Their prediction was 0.1%.
So how many people...
They were wrong.
How many people do you think obeyed and went all the way to 450? Make a prediction.
The results of our experiment were almost identical to the original. Over 50% of participants continued up to 450 volts. The majority of people will administer lethal electric shocks just because a guy in a white coat is telling them to.
450 volts.
450 volts.
450 volts.
450.
So men and women obeyed. So if you got this idea that women would never do that, but you also might have the stereotype that women are more obedient. All right, write this down, but I want you to remember Stanley Milgram's parents were victims of the Holocaust. Milgram was a Jew. And so when all of the Nazis went on trial after the Holocaust, they kept saying the same thing again and again when asked, why did you kill all those Jews? And they kept saying, I was merely following orders. I was merely following orders. Is that an excuse? I don't know. But Stanley Milgram said that we have a strong desire to obey. A lot of us do. Okay? A lot of us do. Okay? So when I have students in the classroom who never do anything I tell them, I'm thinking, well, at least they would never shoot me because somebody told them to shoot me. At least. Okay? All right, so Stanley Milgram's shock experiment studied people's willingness to commit inhumane acts as a result of what? So what did Milgram study? It's not conformity, but the answer is obedience to authority. That's what Milgram studied, obedience. All right. The results of Stanley Milgram's studies on obedience suggested that what? All right, hit pause, take your time. But what did he study? He studied obedience. Okay, obedience. Obedience to authority. Okay, if you said C, it's the opposite of C. You just went too fast. Okay, you need to hit pause. In Stanley Milgram's research on obedience, the teacher, the sucker, routinely did what? Obeyed the authority figure. Okay? All right, that's enough for this one. Okay?